I sought the Lord, and He answered me and delivered me
Tonight I have a great guest,
from
April Carlson.
every
April's a lifetime friend of Jacqueline and I,
those who
and
love
we have
the
enjoyed her company and relationship for many years, as well as with her husband, Bob. So the first question I always ask everybody on this podcast is, what gets you up in the morning?
Oh my gosh, I would say curiosity and opportunity and the beauty of the day, which no matter what the weather is apparent when I look out my sliding glass door. Don't need drapes because there's a deck out there on the second floor. And I just observe what the day is going to be and what nature's all about and what God has given.
Yeah, it's on the east side of your house too.
Yeah.
So you see the sun come up or not?
Oh, I see the sun come up, and actually, it's waking me up really early now. And
Yeah,
I actually thought maybe I need to get a mask, but then I'm thinking, no, don't. Just let it happen.
let it happen. I know. That's good. Well, April, give us a little context to your life.
Okay, well, let me start with the opportunity, the blessings, the privilege that I have, for whatever reason, been able to experience. Probably the first thing that I would say is that I was raised in a home where both of my parents were truly enthusiastic about Jesus and the faith.
Mm,
They were before and after Christians. I call them people who anybody who wasn't necessarily raised with a lot of faith and along the way encountered Jesus or he encountered them. And then with that came a passion for Christian literature. My father designed tracks back in the day and wrote a lot of the dialogue and the scripts. My mother, who had a business background, um, did her part, and they were partners all through the years.
mm.
And when I was 6 weeks old, they brought the company from Minneapolis, Minnesota to Chicago, Illinois, and that is where it remained and remains. It's still actually an entity in the Chicago area.
It was first called Good News.
It was called Good News Publishers, and then Lithocolor Press was the printing arm that came along 5 years later. Now it's called Good News Crossway, and it's located in Wheaton.
Yeah.
So, as a child of the ministry or the work, I sat at a dinner table often listening to my parents talk about the work, talk about employees. I was a part of that. I would hang out down in the Chicago high-rise building that it was located in. I would run the elevator with Marie, the elevator operator, trying to get the elevator to stop just perfectly at whatever floor. Um, I hung out there. I mean, I was like a little kid. I knew about bindery and presses, and um, actually worked there off and on during the years. My husband worked there also when he was a young man. He worked in the bindery, and he worked on a cutter, almost cut off his hand one time when the cutter blade repeated, which isn't supposed to happen. But we both survived. And so then my father, I would say the blessings that continued were um, meeting my wonderful husband when I was 13. He was 14 at Wheaton Academy. I was a Durham student. He was a town student. Having three great kids, 11 grandchildren and three great grandchildren.
Wow.
Okay, just to continue with, the good things, the givens that I've been blessed with, and I have no idea why, but I look at them as provisions. Um, I met my future husband when I was 13 years old at Wheaton Academy. My parents were moving to California, so I was a boarding student. They had been living in Evanston and then Lake Geneva and then back in Evanston. And they moved to California because my mom was very, very ill between my seventh and eighth grade year and actually almost passed away. So I attended Wheaton Academy. It was just to be for 1 year. But I met this very cute 14-year-old, and I was 13 years old. And I heard he liked me. And so I kind of cased the scene and saw who he was across a crowded room. And when I was a freshman, the very beginning of my freshman year, he asked me to go out to the class party with him. He and his boyfriends tumbled out of the English class we were in, and he broke out of the circle and in a fumbling way just said, "Will you go with me to the class party?" And I said, "Yes." My girlfriends were surrounding me, and then all the boys, including Bob, just ran away down the hall. And we didn't even think that that was weird. We just, I was holding my books, like we all did, walked sedately down the hall as if this was just the way it was. And when looking back, of course, we have laughed so hard about how crazy we both were. We were so young. And he was about 4 inches shorter than I was at the time. He did grow over the summer, and he did surpass me in height. And he always liked to say, and he always used to say, and that I was about 25 pounds heavier, which I thought was really rather rude, but it was the nature of our relationship sometimes. Anyway, so we were very blessed with three children who are very grown, and 11 grandchildren and 3 great grandchildren, one of whom is only 3 months old. And of course, Bob has been in heaven for 5 years. So he does not have, he sees her from his heavenly perch.
Yeah.
But I would say that the challenges to my life were the fact that my mother was very sick and almost passed away when I was a senior in high school as well. And my father did pass away when he was 48. My mother was 47, I was 21, and my brothers were 16 and 18.
Wow.
And that was profoundly difficult for
Sure.
our family, for the business. There were printing works, as they called them, established in Beatenberg, Switzerland, and in Nigeria, and of course, in this area as well. And my mother had a freshman in college, a junior in high school, and then I was married with 2 children at the time. So I look upon my life as much easier than my mother's ever was.
Mm,
But those were tough things to face
yeah.
for our family. And Bob was like my go-to person in every way. He loved my father, knew him well, and actually would sit sometimes by my father's bed when my father was in really bad shape and just listen to the plans my dad had for the work.
Wow.
And they just talk back and forth. So then probably the most defining moment of my life, even more so than that in terms of loss, was the death of my husband 5 years ago. He was my best friend. He was a pretty great guy. And, he was actually an ameliorating force in my life in terms of, he was a very stable person in my life, in terms of humor, demeanor, faith, just optimism, consistency. And he didn't have it easy. He had several long years of ill health that he very rarely complained.
Yeah.
And I have such appreciation for what that must have been like for him. And I, such respect as well. So though, that was probably the very hardest thing. I've had other things too that many people have had, and have experienced. My children have had some really hard times as well. It's their stories to tell, but they are also people of character and people of faith. So I think that's pretty much
Yeah.
it as far as the overview.
Well, I think it's really, really good and well said. I think when you think of your personal relationship with Jesus, what comes to your mind if someone says, you know, how did this whole thing come about? What would you say?
I guess I would say I really never didn't believe in Jesus because it was so much a part of our life. And I was going to church back in the day when you really did go Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday. And I went to, I was part of the Plymouth Brethren Assembly group, and I just knew everybody there very, very well.
Mhm.
And I think one of the most important parts of that for me was the communion service, which they called the breaking of the bread service. And that literally was, there was one service devoted to the beginning and the ending, from the hymns to the prayers to the Bible reading to maybe a little, as they called it, a word that was given, to finally the culmination of the actual breaking of the bread, and then the passing of the common cup, and then a final prayer. And the entire service was devoted to that. And then the second service after that was called the Family Bible Hour, and that was where there'd be preaching. And Sunday school was somewhere in between. I know I went to Sunday school, but when I'm thinking back on it, probably the breaking of the bread service was the most important thing for me. And just, having people in our home always. My mother's and father's home was an open home in terms of hospitality. Bob's family's home was an open home in terms of hospitality, and that's really what we just did naturally, the two of us. In fact, when we were first moved into the house we live in now, that I've lived in for 48 years, still am living in, we had a dedication service to dedicate our home to um, whatever God wanted us to do with it. And it's always been an absolute joy.
I get it. Well, final thought. Jackie and I have known you for about 45 years. That's a long time to know someone. And of course, we both consider you a dear friend and sister, not just in Christ, but just as a friend, a sister to us. What do you want your legacy to look like? What do you want that to project, or what people to say, to think about you?
Oh, I guess just that I knew how to love people, that I was kind, that um, that I that I would stand up for someone that was hurt,
Mhm.
that I walked the walk and didn't just talk the talk of faith. Um, I don't know. I think so much is just, it's just going to be all okay. I don't really think about my legacy very much, honestly. I don't think. I just think I maybe want to just be a pleasing person to God each day without. Boy, I sure hope people notice.
Yeah.
And I think my husband was a really good example of that because, um, at his funeral, people talked about how he just he just was interested in people enough to say, "How are you?" Whether it was in the grocery store or the gas station or any person that ever came and helped us in our home, or just a kind of a person of grace. And that's just really what, I would just want to be faithful about.
Yep. That's really good. That's good. Yeah. I think um, there's a song, I Don't Want to Leave a Legacy, that very famous musical group sings. And And I think that's kind of what you're saying. You want to be who you are. You want to live it out, live life. And April, if you could, all the people who are watching this tonight, there'll be a lot watch this one, I know. What's some words of life you'd like to speak into people tonight?
Oh, wow.
You have the last word.
Oh my goodness. Just well, what, on the back of my card, I guess I could say that on my card, the ones you hand out to people when you're working with them. It's a Frederick Buechner quote, and I love Frederick Buechner. It's I think it's, "This is the world. Beautiful and terrible things will happen. Don't be afraid."
Yes, I like that very much. That's one of my favorite sayings too. That's beautiful.
That's pretty much what it says. I don't have it in front of me, but that's what. And I've read a lot of Buechner, and I really appreciate his the beauty of his words and his insights so much.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that fear holds us back
Mhm,
from so many things,
mhm.
and most of all from love and loving each other, loving others,
Right.
that fear. So April, thank you for taking time to do this with me. And I know sometimes we talk in conversation, the three of us, you and Jacqueline and myself, and those are such rich moments. And we're so grateful for you and for your life. God bless you, and thanks for doing this us tonight with
You are so very welcome, Gary. Blessings on you.
I sought the Lord, and He answered me and delivered me from every fear. Those who look